no European army was present. No foreign empire recorded it. Yet the Ethiopian royal chronicle describes it as a storm swallowing men. In 1887, at a place called Chelenqo, tens of thousands moved under Menelik II, not in chaos, but in formation, with rifles, supply lines, and commanders who understood timing and terrain. The chronicles say the earth shook beneath the marching host and resistance melted before it. This was not folklore. This was not myth. This was a modern war, documented by Ethiopian scribes while the outside world looked elsewhere. Because Chelenqo revealed something dangerous, that Ethiopia had already mastered large-scale warfare before Europe tested her at Adwa. And if this battle were remembered properly, the story of African resistance would never be told the same way again. Tonight, we open the chronicles they ignored. We walk into the storm. This is Menelik II, The Forgotten War of Chelenqo, 1887. Chelenqo did not erupt from ambition alone. It was the result of unfinished resistance, older power structures refusing to yield, to a central authority that was rapidly hardening into a modern state. By the mid-1880s, Menelik II had consolidated much of Shewa and was extending imperial authority eastward into Hararghe, a region long ruled by autonomous leaders, fortified towns, and armed networks. Ethiopian court records describe Hararghe not as passive territory, but as a land of proud lords, trained warriors, and fortified hills. These leaders did not see Menelik as a unifier. They saw him as a threat. According to the Royal Chronicle of Menelik II, envoys were sent demanding submission, tribute, and recognition of imperial authority. The response was silence, then mobilization. Hararghe commanders began raising forces, fortifying positions near Chelenqo, and preparing for confrontation. The Chronicle notes, they sharpened spears and readied guns, believing the king would hesitate. Menelik did not hesitate, but he also did not rush. Ethiopian sources are explicit. Menelik's movement toward Chelenqo was not improvisation. The court historian Heruy Wolde Selassie, drawing from earlier chronicles, emphasizes logistics. Organized supply caravans, rotational marching columns, designated commanders for flanks, center, and reserves. This was not a raid. This was an army. The chronicles state, the host moved like a river, divided into channels, yet flowing as one. Firearms were distributed deliberately. Veteran commanders were positioned where resistance was expected to be strongest. And crucially, Menelik expected to be attacked first. Scouts reported hostile movement ahead. Local informants warned that Hararghe forces intended to strike the column before full deployment. So Menelik slowed the march. He arranged the ground. The Chronicle records, the king ordered readiness, for he knew the blow would come before the sun reached its height. The resistance struck first. This point is clear in Ethiopian records and is often erased in simplified retellings. Hararghe forces descended toward Menelik's forward formations, attempting to disrupt the column before its full strength could be brought to bear. Dust exploded across the plain. War cries echoed. For a moment, chaos ruled the air. But the Ethiopian Chronicle is precise in its judgment. The host bent, but it did not break. Shield lines locked. Musket fire answered in controlled volleys. Commanders held position. What the resistance believed would scatter Menelik's army instead revealed something terrifying. They were facing a force prepared to absorb impact. The initial assault lost momentum. And that was the moment Chelenqo truly began. Once the first strike failed, Menelik did not pursue blindly. He countered systematically. The chronicles describe coordinated movement forward, not a charge, but a tightening advance. Firearms suppressed resistance positions. Infantry pressed in controlled waves. The terrain became a weapon. Ethiopian scribes write, "The land itself turned against those who stood." Hararghe formations began to fracture. What had been confidence turned into confusion. Resistance leaders attempted regrouping, but Menelik's commanders anticipated withdrawal routes and cut them off. This was no longer a clash. It was an unraveling. The Chronicle records, they found no ground firm enough to hold. By midday, Chelenqo was no longer contested ground. The resistance was breaking, not from lack of courage, but from being outmaneuvered. Menelik's army pressed from multiple directions, compressing surviving units toward unfavorable terrain. Some resisted fiercely. Others fled. The Ethiopian record is unsparing. Those who stood were swallowed. Those who ran found no path. The phrase, "a storm swallowing men," appears here, not as poetry, but as description. Chelenqo did not end with negotiation. It ended with dominance. By late afternoon, organized resistance ceased. The battlefield fell silent. Chelenqo was not remembered abroad. No European observers recorded it. No foreign correspondents framed it for empire. But in Ethiopian history, its significance is immense. Because Chelenqo proved something decisive, that Ethiopia had already mastered modern, large-scale warfare before Adwa. The chronicles emphasize coordination, discipline, intelligence, and logistics. This was not medieval combat. This was state warfare. Hararghe was absorbed. Imperial authority expanded decisively eastward. And Menelik emerged not merely as a king, but as a commander of modern war. Ethiopian historians later wrote, "After Chelenqo, none doubted the strength of the king's hand." 9 years later, Europe would learn this lesson the hard way at Adwa. But the warning had already been written, in Ethiopian ink, on Ethiopian ground by Ethiopian hands. Chelenqo was that warning, a storm history chose to ignore. This battle was not forgotten by accident. It was forgotten because it shattered a narrative before the world was ready to hear it. That Africa did not wait to be taught war. That Ethiopia did not become modern under pressure. It already was.